All systems active. Launch sequence activated. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You are listening to Beyond the Verse, a Star Citizen podcast. A show dedicated to Cloud Imperium Games, Star Citizen, and Squadron 42. Whether you fight, explore, unite, and or trade, we bring you news, updates, interviews, reviews, and analysis. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a pour of Radegast, and join us as we go Beyond the Verse. Hello, friends, and welcome to Beyond the Verse Star Citizen podcast. I'm your host, Sulyce, and this is episode 71. And we are joined with two legendary figures in the Star Citizen community and beyond. A first time on Beyond the Verse podcast, Olli. And for the third time, Space Tomato. How are y'all doing, gentlemen?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about Star Citizen and the future of Star Citizen.
Yeah,
a lot to
well.
unpack.
Thanks for bringing us on. Looking forward to a good talk with plenty of salt and sugar.
Oh yeah, probably a little bit more salt given the recent news, but we'll ease our way into that conversation. Segments on today's episode, we will be going through This Week in Star Citizen. We're going to dabble in the ship showdown, kind of reactions to this last round as we enter round 2 today. So some interesting tidbits there. I would love to hear Olli and Space Tomato's reaction on some of the matchups, their favorite ships going in. So we'll hit that. We'll have some fun talking about that. And then we got some drama to talk through, and we'll make this as interesting as possible. But we are obligated to talk about 4.0 and the recent news from the roadmap update saying it's being pushed to Q4. What does it mean? Is it 2025? A lot to unpack there. And then our reactions on 3.24. So let's just ease our way. We're going to start with from the community. It's a promise I make to all of my listeners. I want to go through the comment section. I would like to get through those, but we are going to go a little bit on the faster side. So let's switch over real quick to the comment section again at the end of each episode, especially at the end of this episode. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts, questions, comments, concerns for Olli, for Space Tomato, as I will share those comments and reactions to them as we go. So let me get into this. So the first comment, we have 9 comments to get through. The first is from a citizen, Groza. Super happy with Blockade Runner test. My biggest hype for it is that, in my experience, it genuinely felt like a gathering of citizens willing to volunteer for the CDF. People just worked together and fought the bad guys. We put cargo on fellow stranger citizen ships. No one killed each other. It really felt like a group effort. Great job, CIG, and great job, citizens. Can't wait to see where this goes and what the future brings for events. And that actually brings me to my first topic. I would love to hear if the two of you have dabbled in 3.24. Have you had the chance to get into Blockade Runner, and what is your first or initial reactions to this next dynamic and global event? We'll start with you, Olli. Have you been able to jump into this and play?
Star Citizen, for me, I tend to not jump into these things when they first come out because it's an alpha and I don't really want to ruin that first experience. Yeah. I kind of give it always a little bit more time. But it's really cool to hear people are enjoying it. And I think that social interaction is the future of Star Citizen. And I think once stability becomes something you can rely on, that's exciting. Events popping off like that. You don't, for me personally, I wouldn't jump into it just yet because I'm like, well, they might still be fixing things. It's in active development. So I always give it a little bit more time for that sort of thing. And as a content creator, that's kind of, I've got to make that balance of showcasing the blockade runner and also, experiencing it. But I haven't played it yet, but it's exciting to know that people are enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about you, Keenan? Have you been able to, you and your org, been able to jump into a blockade runner? Have you heard any feedback from it?
Yeah, I jumped in for the first test, which was a little more limited than what I've heard they did this last week. And I would say, as a replacement for Ninetales Lockdown, it's great. Ninetales Lockdown itself was a bit of a meme for a lot of people. I think the community was a lot smaller back when that event came out, and Xenothreat was really taking a lot more of the buzz and excitement at the time. But even then, it was just, as an event, it felt very bare bones, very centralized, and not as diverse as what they've made with Blockade Runner, where they have you going out to different locations. You get to strategize a little bit more. You get to plan with your team a bit more. And it still depends a lot on combat, which I think it makes sense for what they're doing. It allows them to make an event with not as much time away from developing the game. But it also still doesn't provide the cargo haulers with a truly cargo focused event that I think they're looking for. And that's one thing. But the idea that you have basically different teams now that can be doing different things at the same time and communicating with each other, it builds a lot more of a community feel to the event. And it has very similar feelings to Xenothreat, I think, which people have probably noticed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different coat of paint. There are some different details, and I think ultimately it does a good job of providing a fun event for people to get involved in. It's nothing groundbreaking for Star Citizen,
Sure.
but it's still certainly interesting for people to do. And it gives an open door for folks to jump in with groups that they might not normally play with.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but do the rewards for these events matter to you? Or are you just enjoying Star Citizen gameplay? Like, do you think people would be more incentivized to play it if there was kind of progression or a reward behind it? Or is it just because there's something new and fun, gameplay-wise, people would play it anyway?
Just to respond quickly to that, you saw it pick up with Overdrive Initiative, the desire to get access to the F7C, right? Like the access to get the ship. You had to go through all the Overdrive Initiatives, the first couple of phases of Xenothreat. I think when it's something as grand as that, even though it's blocked behind a paywall, you still have to pay for it, right? But I thought that was a driver, at least for Soul Provision, the org that I lead. A lot of it was, let's get everybody access to the ship. It was this desire. However, the flip side to that, the Xenothreat armor, no one cared. Nobody in my org cared about the Xenothreat armor, and I didn't hear anybody else caring about it. It's a good question, though.
I think if progression in Star Citizen mattered more overall, people would care more. Like, if you were actually climbing a ladder of reputation and they were like, yeah, if you do this event, CDF is like really going to give you a lot more credit for being a part of CDF. I think that would matter to people. But where Star Citizen is right now, it's still kind of, it's like, okay, in-game rewards, cool. Some people really do care about that, and I don't want to discredit them. But I think it's just about the fun right now.
Yeah, that's fair. Is that kind of, to throw the question back at you, Ollie, do you think the reputation system that they're trying to build out fixes that? Do you think as people are trying to grow reputation, does that drive individuals or orgs to complete certain mission types? Or what are your thoughts there?
I think reputation is just another word for access. Like, does it give you access to systems? Does it give you access to missions? Does it give you access to shops? I think if they, like, imagine if Cousin Crows only opens up to people that have a reputation of 3 in bounty hunting, for example. Like, that would encourage people to go and do bounty hunting. So, like, you guys said, it kind of like the reputation kind of needs to matter a bit more for that to, like, be worthwhile. Mission access.
Imagine if certain parts of Stanton only allowed you to have weapons if you had a certain rep with CDF or with
Yeah.
UEE. That would be
idea.
something to work for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. I'm curious what the casuals out there would say to that, because like I think that excites the three of us. I can imagine that would be great for across most orgs, but that individual that plays for 1 or 2 hours a week, that just wants to go and visit and explore, I think that would be the one downside there. But you're saying like access to actually shoot and compete and have access to those weapon systems, but
Yeah,
there's always a trade-off, right?
Something to shoot for.
Yeah.
Like the first question, like people say, Ollie, like I watched you play Star Citizen and I got Star Citizen, but now I'm not sure what to do in Star Citizen. And getting reputation would be, oh, you should do this because then you can do X and then you can do Y. Like there's kind of like a path there for you. Like, oh, if you want to go to New Babbage, you have to have a minimum of like 1 reputation doing something, for example.
Yeah.
These things could be, or like Grimhex. You can only get permission to land at Grimhex if you've done, some shady stuff, for example.
Yeah. Or it was very difficult to do so otherwise. Like you'd have to like sneak your way in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so back to the comments. Last week, we had a listener write in and ask questions about joysticks. So quick, Adam Johnson, for a cheap joystick, I use the Logitech Extreme 3D Pro. It's not the best or the latest or the greatest, but it does the job. Going up 2 comments, Carlos Landaverde, we'll go with that. I use the Thrustmaster T-Flight Host 4. It requires a little tinkering with the mapping, but it has worked for me for years for a budget flight stick. To Ollie and to Space Tomato, are y'all keyboard mouse? Are y'all joysticks? And how would you generally respond to the overall setup of your flight rig? We'll start with you, Space Tomato.
I am an MKB player. I would love to have a HOTAS. I used to have the T16000 from Thrustmaster, and then it got some weird problem with the potentiometer, and I couldn't use the twist, and I just got rid of it. That was years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm all mouse and keyboard right now, but I would love to get like a set of VKBs. I'm partnered with VKB, and I would probably have a set, but the import taxes in Turkey are crazy, so we haven't we can't get any shipped here. But once I get back to the States, I am planning on picking some up.
Yeah. What about you, Ollie? What are you rolling?
So I recently tried out the Virpool set, and they're over there. That's why I was kind of pointing. And they're amazing. Like the quality of them is great, and I love using them. But because Star Citizen was going through a phase of changing the keybinds every 10 minutes or resetting them and changing them, like it got to a point where I had to like draw out a picture of the joystick and say, no, this button does this and this button does this. And then I'd go into game and go, no, it was meant to do that, and have to remap it. So they're over there for now because I was moving stuff around, but most of the time keyboard and mouse, because the FPS combat, like it's just awkward going between the two, and the keyboard and mouse is fine for flight. Like I don't do anything extreme enough to demand joysticks all of the time. One thing I would say is I really, really want them to fix controller support, because you can use a controller. So you can use a controller up until you get into an elevator, and then you can't click the elevator. Like everything else works. And like I've even got a controller here that has like extra buttons on the back, so you can do like shift and control for things, but you can't use elevators with a controller, and it's so annoying. I would prefer to play this game with a controller, honestly.
Same here, man. Same here.
Interesting. Even with like the 400 key bindings that you can do, like that's my like fear of getting into the controller.
You
can still have the keyboard though, right?
That's fair.
Yeah.
No, that's
like, but like opening doors on a ship, which I don't do all that often, I can quickly lean over and go, oh, whatever it is. But for like 80%, I can use the controller and just kick back.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd have to say this recently, since we're waiting on 324 and I don't want to burn myself out on cargo ops. I've been doing a lot of low flying, and I don't know if you've ever low flied with joysticks. That's game changer. Like mouse and keyboard's fine. I did that for 2 years, but there's something about getting into the leaning, right? Like as you're flying, like I actually physically lean when I'm It's great. Yep. That with the Tobii eye tracker.
I would say like the best experience is with a HOTAS or HOSAS or whatever it's going to be, but everybody should know mouse and keyboard at least a little bit, because you don't want to be that person who gets to try out a new build at a convention or some random place where they give you a mouse and keyboard and you're like, how do I open my ship? How do I put the landing gear down? Like the basics are good to know.
It's such a funny point. I at last year's CitizenCon, right? Like every computer was set up with like joysticks. I'm like, I really wish I could, but I didn't know how to fly joysticks at the time. So I'm like, I'll stay on mouse and a keyboard. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah, that is nice.
I don't know if you guys enjoy the CitizenCon bingo, but on my card is a new UI for the keybinds.
Okay.
Like, imagine a keyboard on the screen, and then you could like assign it from there, like rather than having to like scroll, or just a search function in the settings menu. Please, anything. Because there's so many times I'm like, okay, how do I open my ship doors? Because it's changed, and I don't know what tab it's under, or I can't find it in the scroll. Like, it's so painful to do. And I play Star Citizen daily, so
it is nice that they have that menu now that you can pull up. I guess it's not new necessarily, but the menu, you can pull up the quick actions, and then you can kind of change your key bindings from there. But not everything shows up in that.
Yeah.
So y'all heard it here first. 4.0 is getting pushed to 2025 because Ollie wants a new user interface on his.
Yeah, it's a good job I don't work at CIG. The feature list would keep
At
going.
least another 2 years of development right there.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that, y'all.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, back to the comments. A couple more left. Call Me teaches videos on the Spotify content. Amazing. I couldn't find your YouTube channel for some reason, so I'm glad you decided to put this vid on the podcast. As far as 324 is concerned, I'm thoroughly enjoying the new mechanics. Yeah, so last episode was the first time I ever tried uploading video to Spotify. Didn't know you could. And it's actually a really cool system. Got a lot of great feedback. I'll continue to do so. Thumbs up. We have a Voxelden. Chief, when Pyro is, quote, functional. Yeah. Do you think trade routes in Stanton will become safer from pirates and griefers? I'll respond after y'all. So when Pyro launches, how much safer or less safe does that make trade routes in Stanton? Ollie, what do you think?
Exactly the same. Just as dangerous.
Just the same?
The tools aren't going away. So if people want to pick on you in Stanton, they'll pick on you in Stanton.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. Like, because people make like bigger routes and do the things they're doing now. Like, they'll go to Pyro, sure, but there'll still be people in Stanton. So I don't think it will change, personally. There'll just be less people maybe looking out for you.
Yeah. Good point. Keenan, what do you think?
Yeah. It's all about where the money is. So, I mean, unless they do something to drastically change the profitability of commodities in Stanton, which yeah, we all hope that the economy takes some big step up with 4.0, but if they don't say it explicitly, it probably won't. So I don't think it will really change much. Yeah, I've got to say I'm mostly in agreement there.
I think for me, I have to separate the two. Like, there is a difference between piracy and griefing. So I agree with both of you about piracy. I don't think it's going to change much. I think they're going to go to the most advantageous trade routes. And if that means the Stanton trade routes, that's where piracy is going to be. Griefers. So if you look at it the way I do, they're trying to cause as much pain for the players as possible. And so for me personally, I think the culture of Pyro will be lawless. It'll be, people will go there knowing that there's a risk and knowing that you have to, probably have a cargo ship that has the ability to fight back, right? As an example. So I almost think it would probably increase the griefing in Stanton, just because that's where the prey, right? That's where the most opportunity is for that griefing aspect. So I don't know. Do y'all separate the two? I'm assuming y'all would separate the two. I think one is like a game loop and the other one's not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
sorry, go on.
All right, go ahead, Ollie.
I was just going to say that I think people that are griefing want to inflict pain on people that don't want to be griefed. And if you're in Pyro, you probably half accept it. And it's quote unquote funnier to grief someone in Stanton where they think they're safe, right? So I agree with you that people in Pyro, it's a known thing. Like, they won't be griefing. It'll just be that's the way it is. Whereas in Stanton, it's more annoying to be picked on while you're in Stanton because you think you're safe.
Yeah.
I think if they're doing things right, CIG, and this is not a slight at anybody. This is not to attack people, but if they're doing things right, I do think that Stanton should end up being filled with less lazy pirates, in the sense that it'll be easier to pirate in Pyro. You should have more consequences. It should be more of a pain to actually do the full function of piracy in Stanton. You shouldn't just be able to blow a ship up, see the cargo spill out. This is like a new player, right? They get into the game, they're like, yeah, I want to be a space pirate. They go and they blow a ship up, they see the cargo spill out and realize, oh, I have to go collect that cargo. No, I'm out. And they leave, right? Somebody's going to see that as griefing because they just got their ship blown up. They're sitting here in EVA waiting for a pickup, and they realize this person didn't even steal any of my cargo. Did they just grief me? And like the person who did that should have way more consequences for doing something like that, to be a deterrent from just lazily going around and blowing up ships and deciding, nah, I don't want to finish this job. There should be some level of commitment that you have to pirating somebody in Stanton, whereas in Pyro, you're still going to get in trouble. Like, the gangs aren't just going to let you go around blowing the people up in their territory. They've got order to keep in their own territory, so they're still going to come after you. But it should still be easier for people to get away with doing things, because it's not as, up in arms like the UEE is.
Yeah.
It's a good point about the territory thing, like the factions. It almost feels like it's not lawless, Pyro.
Yeah.
Like, as in, like, there is laws, but they're just not. It's just not one centralized law, which seems like Pyro light to me.
With them continuing to say it's lawless, because it's like,
yeah,
it's lawless in the sense that the government's not there, but if you're like, the cartels aren't just going to let any small petty criminal do whatever they want in their territory, right? They've got order to keep so that they can keep their power. Headhunters aren't just going to let you go on murder spree and be like, oh, well, it's Pyro.
When in Pyro,
I feel like that's what I believed Pyro was going to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's because I'm dumb or because that's what CIG were telling me it was going to be.
Yeah, CIG just hasn't talked about like reputation and stuff enough in Pyro.
I agree. Yeah, whenever I think of Pyro, I think of like the Wild West. Like, it's exactly to your point, Keenan. It's like the law exists, but within factions. It exists within like the territories. When I say lawless, I mean like being penalized. I don't know, you commit griefing or you kill somebody accidentally or on purpose or whatever. Like, having that stick with you when you go back to Stanton, I think that's kind of what I mean. Like, if there's something that sticks with you. But I fully expect and want there to be, if you commit a crime, I want them to come chase after you. Like, I want the headhunters to follow your ass all the way to Stanton. I think that'd be hilarious, quite honestly. But all right.
Then we get into the topic of like, how do they even know you committed a crime?
Yeah. Lot to unpack there.
My mind is blown right now.
Yeah. All right, to wrap up the comment section, we got Dakota Riley. What an amazing time to be a Star Citizen backer. This is my first ship Showdown. We'll talk about here in a second. And it's been fun watching some of the battles that have taken place and seeing just how quickly we can determine the winner of a bout. I'm still disappointed that the 890 jump lost to the 600i. That was such a close match with a final separation of only 1,000 votes. He's in our org. We're a bunch of nerds. Like, I love math, and you guys are going to see that here in a second. But that will probably be the closest match we see. Actually, that wasn't. It was a couple days ago. And the polar opposite of the day before, where the Nursa won with a 5-1 vote. Staying on topic of the... I guess now's a good time. No, it's not. I'm gonna stick with the comment section. Dustin, we're going to you real quick. Farming isn't for everyone. I get that, but I'm excited for the variation of game loops that are coming. Being able to grow food to sustain org headquarters without having to run to the nearest Leo Costco will be great. And that'll go to the poll that we'll go to here in just a second. I asked the question, what's your favorite game loop in 4.0? In accordance to Inside Star Citizen, and that was part of the poll answer. The last comment, Dreamer of Days, now for something completely different. Chris Roberts has already confirmed there are going to be Star Citizen novels. If and when this IP launches, do you think Cloud Imperium would be open to leasing the franchise for movies or Prime-esque shows? I kind of want to ask y'all about that. Considering Chris Roberts' history with studio demands, I suspect the company would want to keep a tight grip on the creative direction if they decided to lease it at all. I think that's a very interesting question. What do you think? Let's fast forward maybe 20 years from now when the game launches. Do you think Star Citizen becomes like a novel series, a movie, a TV series? Like, do you think that there's a desire or this growth potential for beyond just the video game? What do you think? We'll start with Keenan first.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's almost without a doubt. Look at how much work they've put into the back end, the lore. Like, if you go through Astro Historian, shout out, good friend, great
Absolutely.
channel, check out his stuff. Lore Daddy of Star Citizen, if you look at all of his work over time, you will see just how much effort they have put into building out all of history up until this point. From the 2100s to the 2900s, you've got a period of colonialism, a period of authoritarianism, a period of expansionism, all this stuff and there are just dozens, if not hundreds, of pockets where they could have little short stories, novels, maybe like the commenter said, movies. But that all depends on the success of the project. It all will come back to Squadron 42, even Star Citizen itself. All of it depends on whether Squadron 42 can set that basis and actually bring enough people into this to build that interest. Because if there's only a couple million people in the world who are going to care about a Star Citizen themed movie, there's no point in making it. They've got to really blow this up to be an IP that captures a lot of people's interest. And I think the potential's there, but it keeps getting pushed back. So it's definitely possible.
What about you, Ollie? What do you think?
Yeah, no, right. The lore is there, and I think it'd be super, I say easy to do, but in terms of it'd be super easy to make a plan. Whether or not it'd be super easy to do, I don't know, but I would absolutely see them. I would say not a movie, TV series, and yeah, novel, 100%. I think it'd be pretty feasible that it would come up with a novel, especially in the situation where Squadron 42 comes out and the story resonates with people. You've got that jump point, to do kind of follow-ups and things like that. So yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah, and for me, I think having Mark Hamill and having these big name actors kind of play into me agreeing with you. I think there's already a foothold. There's already influence with Hollywood. There's influence with the actors that probably would take these roles. So I absolutely think that is an extreme potential. So I would like the game to come out, though, before they worry about a TV show.
Second CitizenCon bingo item, announcement of a TV show in association with Amazon Prime.
Oh.
You think so? Okay.
I don't know.
Man. Just
Wild card.
Imagine the reaction to. I mean, they're going to be like, "Oh, they haven't finished the game. They're switching to a TV show."
Just a little like a 30-second teaser.
Yeah, I'm just happy for once it's not me over here coming up with these crazy ideas. It's usually,
I told you, it's a good job I don't work for CIG. Yeah. It would be constant.
Usually it's me. It's Idris is coming out in September. All right, let's wrap up the polls, and I have one email to read, so we'll go through this kind of quickly. I do want to hear y'all's reaction to this. 2 Thursdays ago, the Inside Star Citizen was the gameplays that they were releasing, and so we had the location, we have farm locations, scrapyard locations, trade post locations, and then they introduced game loops like salvaging, repair, and then they just announced yesterday about the drain and charge game loop as well. So the question is, what are you most excited about? With 60%, they voted on trade posts, the new locations, which makes sense because it's a hub of where quests, would be given. I think of World of Warcraft, Elder Scrolls Online, where there's a hub of quests. I see trade posts being that. Then 20% the farm locations, 10% scrapyard locations, and 10% salvaging locations. So pivoting over to the two of you, what are you most excited about beyond new planets, beyond maybe some of the things we've already discussed up to this point? What are the game loops? What are you most excited about when it comes to the gameplay? And we'll start with you, Ollie.
On that list, the trading outposts. But for me, long term is like base building and homesteads.
Yes.
Which they keep teasing. So maybe we'll see a bit more of that soon. But yeah, for me, homesteads. We've seen a little bit with it with the hangars and like making your own home, and I think that's quite exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what about you, Keen?
It's got to be the charge and drain mixed with the engineering. It's everything that I've been waiting to see. Interaction with the environment, going to a local place and being able to do something there that doesn't require you to leave and come back or to go and do some mission off world, but to just be able to show up at this location and find small tasks to be able to do. And I'm still kind of developing this idea in my head. I want to make a video for it, but just seeing the way that they're starting to, they've started with engineering and this idea that we had of power management. They introduced the fuses and repairing and replacing those fuses. And now they're bringing in charge and drain and the idea that that's going to mess with components. And you're starting to see that engineering is not just one thing. It's not just Beam Citizen. It is a combination of different parts that are starting to fill in and build up this entire idea of repair and maintenance. And I think that's a really long thread that they can keep tugging on to build out non-combative play in this game. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to learn more about that. I didn't have time or don't know necessarily where to research the charge and drain. I think the repair and all that, I think that looks very interesting from, to your point, like the engineering standpoint. But basically anything beyond just walking around and shooting things. I think there's a lot of games that do that. There's a lot of walking around and shooting. But that's why I like delivery missions and cargo missions so much, is its versatility. You could get into shooting if you wanted to, but imagine doing a box mission and while you're doing it, you're also repairing stuff along the way. I like the idea of this communal game loop. And then Ollie, you hit the nail on the head. Base building is where me and my org are at. Like, I would love to just hang out and exist in space at my own place. That's why I have one of those Pioneers. I got like an 8-kilometer square ready to go, and we have a lot of those. So we're gonna own the planet at some point. But yeah, super excited about the base building. Do you think we're going to see anything at CitizenCon that's going to point that we're closer to that? I mean, with the persistent hangars and development there, are we closer to base building, or are we thinking way down the road? Kind of just tossing that up to whoever has an opinion. There's no intel, right? There's nothing that says otherwise.
Yeah,
But
I thought that one was for Ollie.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like it was kind of weird that we got teased the homestead thing. Like, because I don't think anyone was expecting it. And obviously CitizenCon's coming around, so you think that'd be something they would just save. To me, that sounds like they're going to show more of it, because I think base building had a massive reaction last year. Mm-hmm. And I think they went, oh, people like base building. We better do some more of that, or at least include it in our next presentation. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have a segment on base building. I don't think it's close, though.
Yeah.
Because they only started development in January this year, right? So, and there's like, we haven't had any inside Star Citizens about it at all. So, as far as I know, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
You guys would know more than
Yeah,
me.
we haven't had any, but they basically that they'll be showing it.
Yeah, so don't know, ways off, I think, but exciting.
I think base building is the future of the game in terms of their goal. You know, we're coming up on the end of a big kind of phase and era for Star Citizen. Weird to say, I know the game hasn't come out, but server meshing was a goal that was set 6 years ago. And since that point, we've always looked at 4.0 and server meshing as kind of, here's where we need to get. And they're going to introduce the first new star system. They're going to introduce server meshing. There's got to be something new, for lack of a better term, as many people would say, a new carrot on the stick. And I think base building and crafting are that thing, because they bring together a lot of stuff. And so that's got to be a big topic that they're bringing into CitizenCon. And like Ollie said, it was a little weird that they put it in that video that was solely for 324. They kind of just shoved it in at the end there. Yeah. But I think they're really, like, to me, that felt kind of like a Hail Mary. They see kind of interest waning a little bit, and they're like, wait, please understand, we are going to get the base building. It's coming at CitizenCon. Just like, here's a little boost to get you there.
Yeah.
Kind of a post. And I think that they'll show it. I don't think it's going to be up to whatever it was they showed at CitizenCon last year, but I do think we'll have something related to base building probably by the time we see the third star system, which, possibly hot take, I think will probably be next year.
Okay. Do you have any idea what it would be? Nyx or Terra?
Yeah, Nyx.
Nyx?
Oh, not
You don't
Terra.
think Terra? You don't think they're ready to
That would be crazy if it was Terra.
see Earth in the Star Citizen world? That'd be crazy. Awesome.
If it was Terra, that would be something else. But no, I think it'll be Nyx.
Didn't so at CitizenCon, Jared Huckabee was giving us a tour in the studio, and he made mention, I think the first system they ever worked on was Terra, and they got pretty far along with Terra, but they decided to stop because there wasn't enough contention. So they had to create Stanton because there was contention and actual game loops to play. I thought that was a very interesting thing that he shared. Yeah, because Stanton or Terra is supposed to be this like utopia. Like everything's already built out, so it's like quote unquote perfect. But they moved over to Stanton so that they could have Lawless. They could have these game loops of like bounty hunting that wouldn't exist necessarily in Terra. So thought that was interesting.
Terra. We actually saw some of Terra. In 2015, they showed some video. You can still find it, I think, on their YouTube channel, of a character running around in third person on the cityscape of Terra.
What? I gotta find that now.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, definitely look into that.
Is that I can't remember in game. That's the other. What's the other access point? Oh no, it's not. It's Magnus. Isn't
Magnus.
It?
Yeah.
Magnus, Terra,
in
Pyro.
Stanton. So I'm just like, would that make sense that would be the next system because it's you can access it from Stanton?
I think Magnus has a chance of being in the first 5, but it also would take. Nyx makes sense because we already have the landing zone of Nyx. Magnus is one starting point, and that's the home of Drake, so people would obviously want that.
Yeah.
But it also would make sense if it was Castra, because Castra is high security and they kind of need a high security system. So I don't know, there's reasons it could be any of them, but I hope it's Magnus. That's the home of my org.
That's awesome. I love the guessing that we're doing on this show. All right, let's go through this email real quick, and then we'll actually move on to the news. 46 minutes into this podcast. So hello, first off. Hello, Olli43 and Space Tomato. Thanks for joining Sulyce for this episode. Also, thanks to the people who suggested sticks to use. This is Priminity, the individual who asked. Sulyce, this is funny. Sulyce, the Terrapin has one flaw. No SCU cargo grid. Other than that, it is perfect. Break. I hate the Terrapin, guys. I do like. I don't think there's another ship that I hate more. Like, I actually like Drake compared to how much I hate the Terrapin.
How dare you?
I know.
What's wrong with the space turtle?
I'm getting off the show.
No.
Do not associate me with this.
Space Tomato supports hating the Terrapin. You heard it here. No, I don't know. It was one of my first ships. Like one of the first packs I owned included a Terrapin, and it was like the first thing I melted. I tried flying in it. It's literally a space turtle, but I don't know. I couldn't win any combat, fights. There was issues with bringing boxes up the ramp. It would like glitch through, which evidently happened with a lot of ships. But I just had a really awful like first experience. And then when I gave it a second chance, when I actually was good and actually knew how to dogfight, I couldn't survive anything, even with the whole HP it has. So I just, for me, it's a throwaway ship. Like when I get it in a pack, I immediately melt it to put LTI on another ship. But I just can't like what do y'all see in the Terrapin?
Just the way it looks, man.
It's a turtle.
There's no gameplay with it.
It's the turtle.
Exactly. It looks cool.
No,
that's it. That's
cool.
End of story.
That's fair.
The Terrapin suffers from a problem that, it's just the Star Citizen problem, right? It's like, it's all about what it could be. And it's one of the only ships that we know for a fact will be armored enough to basically go anywhere in the game. And they just don't have that kind of ability in the game yet. So I understand it's not useful. It's super overpriced for what it could do at any point in the game right now. But
sure.
We hope that in the future it will be our useful turtle.
How about it's a useless but beautiful space tale.
I'll agree with the first
And
part.
the sound design is great.
It's I do like the Star Wars homage. Like when the door opens, you have that red glow coming out of the the cockpit or the hull. I think that's kind of a pretty approach, but I don't know, man. I'll come around. I'll give it a third try when there's a game loop that needs it. To your point,
Yeah.
It looks nice in the garage, and that's it.
It's fair.
It doesn't need to fly anywhere.
It doesn't. It's just a place to store things in your personal hangar. Just tuck it away to this
model.
That's right. Back to the email. Even Olli43 used it in one of his older 2 years old videos. Also, do you, and this goes for everyone, they specifically ask, have any commission ideas? So this individual creates art for Star Citizen and pushes it out. So I'm actually going to back out a little bit and not really ask all that specific question, but what would be y'all's advice for maybe a new content creator or an artist? I mean, y'all come from vast backgrounds and have done very well in y'all's communities and the gaming world that y'all participated in. What would be advice for somebody getting started who wants to make money off of their product? I don't know, we can only spend a couple seconds on this if you want to, but Space Tomato, we'll start with you. What would be like your answer to this, or what would be your best advice?
I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of art it is, but just getting the content out there is important. What we live in now on the internet is you have to be able to get your stuff in front of people's eyes, and there are a lot of ways to do that. You just have to find the way that fits your content best, and that can take a while. I mean, I have not been doing this anywhere near as long as Ollie. He's seen a lot more of the history of how making content works for various games, and he could probably speak more to it. But when I started out, it took me a year, 2 years to even start getting people to kind of just notice what I was doing. And I'd post on Reddit, I'd post on Twitter, Instagram, different places, and some places worked, some didn't.
Yep. Yeah. Ollie, you only have 1.6 million subscribers on YouTube. Maybe when you're at like 2 million, we can ask you, but I'm kidding. So what is your best advice to Space Tomato's point?
My best advice is just to fail fast.
Yep.
Like, try stuff and just like, don't see it as trying to get success. Just see it as like, I'm just trying stuff, and like something will work, something will stick. Like when I start a new project, it's like, well, I'm gonna fail quickly. I will make mistakes. It's just that acknowledgement that it won't work first time, and that's okay because I'm closer to like what will work. So yeah, the best advice is just to fail fast and be okay with it, and just like you'll get the audience, and you'll get, if you're passionate about it and you're willing to learn. There's enough people on the internet that someone's gonna find what you do interesting. Like, you're not talking to 20 people, and there's a chance that there are people out there just like you, whatever you're doing, whatever you're into. So yeah, just fail fast and just try and enjoy the journey as much as trying to get to the destination. And I think people gravitate towards people just being humble and just trying to do something they enjoy.
Yeah. I think it's great advice for literally everything in life. Fail fast, learn fast. Yeah, absolutely. Adapt, improvise, overcome for those military individuals out there. So, yeah, we spent the first 50 minutes talking about the community, and honestly, I will always do that. That's the premise of my show. I will always prioritize comments. It might feel segmented or fragmented, but phenomenal conversation. I think we're ready to get into 4.0. Let's go. All right, I had to build up the suspense, the drama. We're getting into 4.0, and so let me at least, we're going to go hard in the next couple minutes. All right, let's start with the news. So Roadmap Roundup happens every Wednesday. We're all excited to see it. They teased that the new development tracker would be launched, and so everybody's all motivated. It hits their social media feed that this thing has dropped, and we all go flocking over to the Roadmap Roundup. It has a cute little blurb in here that they always put, hey, this is just explaining what happened in the decision-making process. Nothing's different. But then we saw this little narrative and I'm going to read it verbatim, and then the three of us are just going to respond. I think we just start there. But let's go to the progress tracker. Quote, "We're excited to share the updated production schedule on the progress tracker through the end of 2024. We've made some changes to how the roadmap operates, reflecting the more agile approach we're taking as we near major milestones. This has led to a significant shift in how deliverables are tracked while still offering transparency into our team's focus. We've tweaked the system to give you better insights into what our teams are working on throughout 2024, with 2025 to come. Since Squadron 42 reached feature complete status last year, we've reorganized our teams into cross-discipline groups to prepare for the upcoming milestones, including 4.0. I can't believe they're still saying 1.0 because all that does is cause people to get stirred up, but 1.0 and Squadron 42's launch. These teams now collaborate across various disciplines to deliver features and content rather than being tied to specific resources focused in a single deliverable. As a result, deliverables are now tracked by the quote owner of each feature, which is how they will be displayed on progress trackers moving forward. Downstream teams like audio, VFX, and others won't be individually represented, as their work is integrated into the main objectives. This streamlined approach also makes it easier to find relevant teams, with these new groups now featured at the top of the list. These new groups encompass all the disciplines previously displayed on the progress tracker, and we've adjusted how production schedules are tracked to accommodate the need for flexibility. Instead of pinpointing individual developers, we're using placeholder headcounts and disciplines for each deliverable. With this update, we're adding a core gameplay pillar, the character art and tech teams, both vehicle content teams, and the locations pillar to progress tracker. Additional teams and deliverables will be added over time. Plus, as we continue refining the production schedule for 2025, we'll populate additional teams, groups, and content. And of course, make sure to tune in for CitizenCon, less than 2 months away." And then the hammer gets dropped. Everybody's soul just gets crushed, and I think the reactions are very dynamic. I watched the Astropub the other day, who had an emotional response, and which I agree with their stance. But it's just polarizing on this response. So let's go to the release view, and then I would love to hear your initial response. "With this publish, we're adjusting the release window for Alpha 4.0 to Q4 2024. Alpha 3.24 and its update to systemic gameplay features has required extra attention to ensure necessary issues are resolved ahead of a release, which has resulted to a lengthier PTU process." A lot to unpack here. While work has continued on 4.0's features and technology simultaneously, we're making this adjustment to release timing to ensure Alpha 4.0 gets the proper amount of time in testing. All right, Space Tomato Man, walk us off the ledge or push us off the ledge, wherever, however you want to do this. What are your thoughts? What are your reactions to hearing this? I think at the very beginning, you and I actually recorded an episode in January, and it was in response of Jared Huckabee saying that all this would be done, Q3 would be 2024 or 324-ish, and they said at the end of summer we would have Pyro. What are your reactions since that fateful day?
Feels like a replay of every other year when I take what they say and then I say it to people, and then I'm like, oh, hey, look at that. I shouldn't have done that. Yeah. Like, I have so many videos that are out there now that just over the years, like my most viewed video of all time is of me covering the 4.0 launch they believed would be in, I think, 2023. No, it might have been 22. And they said it was going to be at the end of the previous year, so I added 6 months onto that and said, oh, well, it might be then. And I was obviously years off.
Yeah.
And this delay is, I think, especially painful because of the way that they communicated at the end of last year.
Yeah.
We're in a different, you can continue to say that it's always the same, but it's not. The things that we tangibly see and we actually get in our hands are different now than they were 3 years ago. In 2020, yes, we were naive to believe that there was any chance Pyro might come in the next year, but the fact is, comparing the end of 2023 to the end of 2020, we were literally in Pyro, right? We saw server meshing work at CitizenCon in a very small environment, but we saw the technology work. We were in Pyro. Everything that they showed us was in the engine, in gameplay. These weren't slides, these weren't pictures, they weren't things like that. That's not to say that that means it's going to happen, but that sets expectations a lot differently, because now you're actually getting the chance to believe, okay, hey, this is something that they're actively it's getting work. And maybe it's in the dev branch, maybe it's in a closed environment, but it's much closer than concept art and just words and promises. So this delay, I think, hurts people a lot more. At the same time, this is nothing compared to what happened with iCache, which was 8 months of silence. And then at the end of that, they were like, hey, we had to come up with a new solution. It would have been absolutely terrible to get to this point and have them say, we haven't put this in the tech previews. We haven't given you guys more updates on server meshing because unfortunately things aren't going wrong and we need to delay into next year. They could delay into next year. They might, but a delay into Q4 is, man, it's disappointing. And don't get me wrong, it's not a good feeling, but it could be so much worse. And that's not to do any sort of damage control. I just think that there is some positive here. It's mostly negative for me, especially because, like I said, we put ourselves on the line communicating this stuff, and then we look like the dummies who then have to look back at. I'm not even looking at the comments on my video from a few months ago, but Q4 could be an October CitizenCon launch. Yeah. It could be a December launch. Those two differences, I think, are a very big deal. CitizenCon 4.0 could be huge compared to a December 4.0, and I'm not going to say which one is more likely, but I think that the feeling that we get from a delay like this is a lot more significant, specifically because of the way it's been communicated, the way our expectations were set, and the things that we have actually seen. I also think that it's pretty crappy that we haven't used the preview channel very much over the course of this year, after we were told that we'd be seeing things like hacking and quantum travel and stuff like that in there. So ultimately, disappointing delay. Hard not to expect something like this when we're already in August and 4.0 hasn't hit Evocati. They got like a month and a half for it to actually launch this quarter. So it makes sense if it was going to come out a little bit later, but it's still just, I understand why people are just, hey, it's more of the same. It's just tiring. It's not even a surprise at this point.
Yeah, and so we were told that 324 wouldn't impact 4.0 because like they're two different teams, two different initiatives, but it sounds like it did. Ollie, what do you make of this? Like,
it really hurts me, but for like different reasons. Like, even though I've been playing and making videos on Star Citizen, I still feel like I'm a little bit of an outsider because I haven't been following the project like you guys. And it actually hurts because it's like my friends are getting sad about this now, and it's like it's kind of hard to watch someone keep getting told or keep getting made promises to and then being disappointed. And it's like hard to watch people that, like, I've watched loads of videos of people saying how like frustrating this is, how annoyed they are, how much it like impacts them, and that kind of like doesn't sit well with me. Like, it's kind of like, oh, you let my friends down. That's kind of how it feels for me. And I kind of feel like we had the plan of Pyro, and then all of a sudden last minute it was like, oh, but we've got these squadron features to put in, and it took longer to put them in than we thought. And it's like, well, we've been in Pyro, we know Pyro's there. We could, like, these features could have coincided it, but I think they wanted to space it out, you know. And I think things took longer than they expected, and I think also end of Q3, early Q4 is a dangerous time to release a big aspect of Star Citizen from like a commercial standpoint. I think if I was trying to navigate the best possible sales for Star Citizen, I would say early 2025, because that's when there's not a lot going on in the gaming industry. Yeah. So like from that standpoint, for them to like release it in primetime gaming, I feel like you're going to have to battle a lot of big games coming out. And you know, there's almost like a skeptic in me. It's like, are they just trying to dodge that window? because they're getting close to it, or is it's not ready? Because, like I said, we've done Pyro, we've seen it, we've seen the technology working. It didn't seem like we were that far away. So what? You know, I still like. We could have Pyro, just not everything in Pyro. Like, I don't understand the difference between everything. Like, you could release somewhat of Pyro and then just add to it. There's no, like, that's what we have right now. Like, we have drip feed of features and updates. So why couldn't we just open Pyro? And the jump gates obviously is a big factor in that, but I don't know. Like they said, we were closer than we were, I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
At the end of the day, it's server meshing. It's not ready. They could add all the squadron features they want, but server meshing will be what continues to delay 4.0.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's my response to this. Is like, for me, it's expected, right? I think it's expected to repeat what Space Spano said, but like, we're so close. we're so close. All the tech pillars are out except for server meshing, and that's kind of bleeds into what you just said. Yes, it's static server meshing. Like, we're not getting into dynamic yet, but at the end of the day, the runway should be very short after Pyro, after server meshing. It should be very short. And so as we look at like CitizenCon, I still think the theme of CitizenCon is Squadron 42. I think that they're going to release a release date. I think it'll be done with polishing. I think they'll have like a marketing effort in 2025. I think it's ridiculous to launch the same year as GTA 6. GTA 6 is going to destroy all other games. I mean, it just is what it is. But I think they're in trouble. I mean, if I'm going to play a little bit of salty role, I think CIG's a little bit in trouble because of this pushback, because what they're going to do, if my timeline's accurate, they're going to say Squadron 42, it's going to release in 2025, here's the marketing push. But our shit's broken over in Star Citizen. Like, tech-wise, like, things don't work. We don't have Pyro out. So I think they're going to have a narrative issue, I think, going into Q4. So I think it needs to release in some way, shape, or form. It needs to release before CitizenCon, so that way the theme of CitizenCon can be positive. It can be Squadron 42. So I would hope in October, but it might be December. Nothing says it'll be 2025. Go ahead.
Do you guys think it would be, obviously we don't have the I can't even think what they're called now. The transitions between Pyro and Stunting.
The jump points?
Jump points, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So would you guys feel, or do you think the community would feel better if we had like a go into Stanton PTU? Like, if it was like, oh, we're delaying 4.0, but in the meanwhile, we've got a PTU or experimental build that allows you to go to Pyro. Would that soften that wound a little bit? Would that make people feel better?
I think, I don't want to say it might make people feel better, but it's not what's important. Pyro is not important. I'm sorry to say. Pyro is just, it's not, it could be any star system. It could be Stanton's cut in half. The important part is server meshing. Everybody wants the game to be more stable. That's the number one thing you'll see people saying in comments, in discussion. I want this game to just let me play the game. And that comes down to server meshing and the things that server meshing allow them to do to make the game more efficient. Adding Pyro will just be the same problems in a new place. And they need to get beyond that. They need to actually deliver server meshing. And I do think that it might placate people for a bit. But it also will be basically going back on something that they've been pushing for half a decade now, which is that we cannot have another star system without server meshing in some form.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think it's hard to market server meshing. You guys know the importance of server meshing, but I think I think Pyro being the headline for 4.0 is going to be easier to market than server meshing. I agree, server meshing is way more important. But I don't think that will be the focus when they come to trailers and things.
When I make my videos about 4.0, I'm not going to say server meshing is here. I'm going to say Star Citizen gets its second system, because you're absolutely right. It's just so much easier to say that than it is to try and convince people server meshing is important, or that suddenly Star Citizen has its working tech kind of thing.
Well, coming out of CitizenCon last year, we had that massive video, The Future of Gaming, right? That Osmongold picked up, right? There's a couple of other content creators that picked up and had reaction videos too. You're 100% correct. It wasn't like, hey, how's the tech working? It was, they showed the video and they're reacting to the graphics and no load screens and how everything was like streamlined. I agree. Like there probably needs to be something. Ollie, when you ask us about a PTU of Pyro, I'm thinking is that not the tech preview channel? Like,
well, yeah. I feel like they should have, in that statement, said, look, we're still refining server meshing, but we want you to help us refine Pyro because it's pretty much done as you guys expect. You know, I feel like, okay, they're still working on the final bits of server meshing, but at least we can kind of help them, you know, do the technical preview stuff. I think that would have made people feel a little bit better, because the problem, I think what people are upset about is like, oh, I thought we were making good progress, and now again we're back in this point where it feels like we're not. So I feel like if you could show a little bit of progress, you know, it's not a complete disappointment, but yeah, I can completely understand people feeling like, well, we were told we were making progress, and I felt like we were making progress, and now it's delayed.
Yeah.
It also kind of depends on what you're willing to believe, because if you're looking forward to it, let's say like GTA 6, we fast forward to next summer and Rockstar comes out and they're like, yeah, GTA 6 was supposed to release in September, but we're delaying it till December. Like, do you believe that they're actually delaying it till December, or are they kicking the can and once December comes by, they're going to delay it again? Like, if you believe that 4.0 is actually coming in Q4, then it's not that big a deal, because you're like, oh, they need a couple more months to patch things up. Okay, cool, we'll give them that. But if you believe that, oh, they're saying that right now, and then we get to November or December, and they're going to say then it's going to Q1 2025, which I think a lot of the community believes, then it's a much bigger deal.
Yeah.
I think early next year for 4.0 personally.
Yeah, I don't think they specified how it was getting launched in Q4. I mean, it could be live Evocati in Q4, but not necessarily PU until next year.
Could be.
Yeah,
could be a lot of different things.
Yeah, I usually take the stance of letting it cook. I mean, almost every game, the Baldur's Gate 3, every massive game that has launched in the last several years has been kicked down, the can down the road. And so, yeah, to your point, it just depends on what narrative that you kind of want to spin here. Is it more advantageous to launch in December? Probably. Is that the why? I kind of just want transparency and honesty at this point, right? Like, as much as they can share.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
I can't imagine the disappointment that they would have to not have 4.0 around for IAE this year, because November is such an important time for them to make money. And the most money Star Citizen ever makes isn't because of ship sales, it's because of the health of the game. Yep. Like, we can see it right now. People are leaving the game, not leaving permanently, but people are taking steps back, taking breaks. Ollie, you said it yourself, taking breaks from the game right now, not because they've slowed down on ship sales, not because they've sped up on ship sales, it's because of the health of the game. And that's ultimately what drives how much money they make every year.
Yeah.
100%.
We're gonna have one more negative topic, and then we'll build back up. I promise we'll build back up. 324. So you could say that I'm gonna say excuse for lack of a better word, but the excuse for 4.0 is server meshing. Okay, great. I don't know if there's necessarily the same excuse for 324. Now, 324 has been cooking in the P2 for a very long time. I forgot what I had written down, but it's been a couple months now at this point, from Evocati all the way up to it's live across all P2 waves. I can't understand necessarily why we're still messing with audio bugs, why we're still messing with like ships, glitching out of the hangar. We now have invisible asteroids again. And I know when you change one thing, there's a domino effect of downstream changes. Like, I know how development works, but I feel like we've taken several steps backwards with this launch of 324, which, again, I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer here, but it's really just personal and instance hangars. from a tech perspective, right? Like cargo hauling is just a loop. It does involve the freight elevator, Roger. But I guess my question for y'all, if you've dabbled in 324 or if you've heard your communities talking, what's kind of been the general reaction to 324 being in the PTU for so long? And Ollie, we'll start with you. I think I started with Space Tomato for 4.0, but we'll start with you for this one. Any reactions to 324 in this current moment?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'll just get off the bat. I'm surprised they changed the kiosk thing.
Oh yeah.
Like in terms of like we're going in a direction and then to just pull back on it.
Yeah.
It's just weird. Like it felt like they had made up their minds and like, this is the system, this is the game, it's physicalized. It is slower, sure, but this is the game, and you know that just deal with it in a way. And then like people were like, oh, we don't like it. We'll change it back. It's like, what's the point of the
we
kiosk
piled
then?
on quite a bit, didn't we?
Like I wouldn't say I liked the kiosk, but I kind of just accepted that was the vision they wanted to make, you know, and it just seems odd to like spend so much time on something to just like, oh, it's just like instead of being able to hit I in a space station, I now just have to hit I over there, and then I get the same thing. Like, it's just odd to me. In general, I really like the persistent hangers and stuff. There was some really awful bugs with it to begin with, and like, to be fair, they have done a lot of bug fixes.
Yes.
Like going into that, trying to record a video and then it just like a loud elevator sound was super obnoxious to begin with. Like I just wanted to do a tour and it was just like so loud. Anyway, and like the persistence thing is kind of cool. I like the update, but also there's no grid system like in the hangar other than the elevator, and that seems like a massive misstep to me. Like being able to place cargo in a pile somewhere is difficult. And it would be cool if I could place furniture on a grid, because then it stays there and I can't run into it and it flies off in a direction. So there's like, it's good, I like it, and I can leave stuff in my hangar, I love it, but it just feels like there are something, like I made a video complaining that your own personal hangar has a load of clutter in it. And I think since then, there's actually no clutter in the Area 18 hangars, because it was like, this doesn't feel like my hangar, it feels like a public hangar. It feels like there's a load of stuff left around and it's meant to be mine. That doesn't really make like a law, it just doesn't make sense. But yeah, there's still improvements to be made and I hope they make them, but yeah, super weird choice going back on the kiosk thing. And I guess, yeah, like we said earlier, base building, we're going to get there, and then the hangars don't really matter anyway, so.
Yeah. Well, a disclaimer for my listeners, I had no intention to bring up the kiosks. That was Ollie. So
sorry.
to be very
I didn't
clear.
realize that was
no, it's
hot topic.
It's just a hotly debated topic right now. It's like, especially in Soul Provision, it's a hotly debated topic because quite honestly, like Star Citizen took the approach of trying to make this as realistic as possible. What physicalized cargo, wanting to move boxes, to load up your ship. And so I think this was a step. Like in real life, you would have to open up a drawer to put, to pull your items out. So I think I was game for it. It added like maybe a couple seconds, to your experience. But yeah, I think stripping that was like, it's almost like they wanted an out, and they saw this as an opportunity, to pull out. And they're like, okay, cool, sounds good. We'll wash our hands of it. But what's your reaction to this all, Space Tomato?
Well, here's my theory on the kiosks. Those kiosks, I did a lot of looking at the old ISC videos where they talked about these updates that were coming at 324. And the main thing they would say, now they would talk a bunch about freight elevators, they talk all about the hangars and stuff. They spent very little time on the inventory access and the kiosks and the drawers. And I think that what they did was they brought in a system, may have been temporary, probably was temporary, that's generally how they're doing development, something that was meant to replicate the freight elevators in a small form, which was 2 screens, one with your inventory, one with your physical reception area, and then they needed a physical reception to finish that replication, so they just added the drawer. I don't think that the drawer was important long term. I think that's something that they just had there because they wanted a small version of freight elevators. And by God, I wish they would just say that stuff. But again, this is my theory, so maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But every single time they talked about those inventories, they never said anything about you need to pick things up, you need to be there, you need to do this, blah, blah, blah. All they would say is we want to make sure that you are physically present to get your stuff. So even when they take the drawer out, that goal is still completed. You still have to be physically present to access your inventory in that place. So having that sort of mix of old and new systems still works because it physically requires you to go to get your FPS items. And I think in the future, they will have something that makes a lot more sense. And I really, really hope that they just give us a display right there on the kiosk that shows your character and all your stuff, that you can do your customization there.
Yeah.
So I understand them taking the kiosk the way they were doing it out because it still meets that goal of physical presence. It's not as pretty as what they had before, but I think it works better for the game right now. And I do hope that they can say something soon about the direction they want to go in with that, because I don't think they're going to stick to the idea that you just access your inventory by pressing a button.
Yeah.
Besides that, though, 324 has been one of the most frustrating cycles of development we've ever seen. And I think there have only been a couple other updates that were in PTU like this. 318 obviously was one of them. I think it might have been 3.11 or something like that, or 3.10. One of the other updates, I honestly, I don't remember, but there were a couple updates that we were in PTU for at least a month or two. But this one has been most frustrating because it specifically wasn't an update, and then it was broken out from another update, so it makes it feel like it's a lot longer. It feels like we've just
forgot
been
about that.
23 PTU. Yeah, it feels like we've been in the 323 PTU for 6 months, and that's very annoying.
That's a good call.
But ultimately, it is a big change. And it's like, this is something that they started in 2022, the cargo refactor. Like, they've been working towards this for a long time. So it makes sense that it's been this difficult, but gosh, it is so annoying to hear, oh yeah, it's right around the corner. It's edge cases we're figuring out. And then 2.5 months later, they're still trying to make it work like that. Every single problem we have with Star Citizen comes back to their communication every single time. And I'm so tired of saying that, but it's the case with 4.0, it's the case with Pyro, it's the case with 324, it's the case with all the disappointment this year. It's everything.
Angry tomato.
Hey man, tomatoes are better with salt, let's be honest. But it's, and so I understand the challenges that they're having with 324 and how they might have knock-on effects. And I can imagine they're probably trying to use that time to get other small bugs out of the way. But ultimately, it really sucks how long it's taken, and I don't blame anybody for being unhappy with it. We don't know everything that's going on, and they don't tell us. So, like, we fill in those blanks with our head, and they're not pretty blanks.
So, a question for you, Space Tomato, because you've been following this for like 30 years now at this point.
More than I've been alive.
Yeah, that's right. This isn't the first time Star Citizen has had something instanced within it, is it? Because I think the old hangar system was external to the game entirely.
Yeah.
So this is the
it's like a module.
Is that maybe a tech issue that they're trying to deal with? Is throwing something instanced inside of a persistent?
Yeah, I think that's definitely causing. I mean, that's where all the big problems in the PTU were, right? Like, you couldn't even get out of the hangar because it wouldn't move correctly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we always kind of knew it would be something like that. Like, when they used to talk about the idea of landing zones, and they were like, yeah, we're not going to build a building for every single hab that's going to be in a city. We're just going to have the habs move around to be in the physical access point when they need to be. So we knew it was coming, but now they've finally gotten to this point, and the tech, I guess, is proving very difficult. Yeah. The hope is that they only have to do this for hangars, and then they can figure that out for habs, or they can figure that out for, I don't know, not caves, whatever else might end up being instant in this game.
Yeah.
Small bunkers.
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be interesting, like, to your point, the communication's an issue. Like, I don't know how much of the weeds they want to get into, but just just trust the community. Like give us everything. Like tell us how broken shit is, because I think like the three of us would totally get in there with an open mind. We would dive into it and be like, oh, okay, this actually makes a lot of sense. But in the current moment, it's very surface level. It's like, oh, we had a couple of snags, so we're delaying until September for our 323 launch. We're like, what? But give us the meat and potatoes, and let us kind of sift through like whether or not we understand the tech or not, in my opinion. But all right, let's try to build this back up. I think we're going to end on a good note. So, or maybe, I don't know, we might start fighting here in a little bit. I'll try to wrap us up in the next 10 minutes, but let's talk Ship Showdown. I want to hear y'all's reactions. I want to get some drama up in here. Terrapin is gone, thank God. No, it won. Oh, it won, I think. Dang it. Yes. Dang it. Okay, well.
Oh, no. What if it won the whole Ship Showdown?
It's no way. It's not going to be the Nursa.
Nobody's beating the C1.
Well, that's today's matchup. So
I don't like the C1 that much, guys. But I'll talk about it if you want.
You guys both are just...
We suck.
It's the feet. I don't like the feet.
Like I said, we're probably going to end up fighting. So Ship Showdown, we're starting round 2 today. So round 2, match 1 is the Nursa versus the C1. So we'll get into some of those numbers here in a second. But we're through with the first round, and here's the website with some words on it. You can go and read and look at pictures, and that's great. But what I wanted to do was show you all my beautiful mind Excel spreadsheet. So welcome to Amazon Senior Product Management, where I like numbers. So here's where we're at. Here's where we're at so far. I will say, given the last couple of minutes of us having kind of like maybe a more critical approach to Star Citizen, one would think that the enthusiasm and engagement might be a little bit on the lower side, but we are seeing more votes come in than we did last year. So I personally look at the year-over-year comparison to see like morale, engagement, participation, etc. And we're up. I mean, we're up 9.6% year over year. So
interesting.
I thought that was a super interesting take. I want to pause real quick because I want to hear y'all's reaction to that. But how much of people's opinions about the status of the game do you think impacts an event like this? An event that is external to the game, going and voting on ships. Some of these ships are broken. I mean, the Reclaimer still has issues, as an example. But how much do you think plays into the engagement here? So, Ollie, we'll start with you, and then we'll love to hear from you, Space Tomato.
I think it's telling. I'm just looking at this chart, which is wonderful, by the way.
Thanks.
The ship with the most votes so far is the Nursa, and that's probably because it allows you to respawn, or like what that represented when that came out. So I think that just tells you that people don't like ships, they like features. So I'm going to say it's going to win.
Yeah. That's an interesting take, because the Nursa takes on the C1 today, and those are your top 2 in numbered votes. I think that's going to be telling. I think we're going to preview right or wrong after today, because I agree with you. The real final. Yeah, this is what matters.
Yeah, exactly.
What are your reactions to the overall like feelings of the game and how it ties into the enthusiasm or participation of Ship Showdown? For Space Tomato. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ollie. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, like, I've done this before, and my interest goes down a bit each time it comes out, because I've already voted for ships I like and don't like, and a lot of these ships have been in it before, so my enthusiasm to follow it isn't as much as it was the first time I saw this event go out.
That's fair.
But I am interested from like a general interest on what is the most popular. So I'm looking forward to seeing how quickly we can get rid of the C1.
I love the under the table jab there.
Yeah.
I can smack you.
Yeah, so Space Tomato, over to you. Same exact question, but just pulling up another detail for us. This is the day, the Sulyce versus the Defender. This is the day that they dropped the 4.0 news. I even put a note here, right? So there's no more Drakes involved, thank God. See ya, Vulture, you're out. So no more Drake. And then the 4.0 being pushed to Q4. This happened on Alien Day. I don't think a lot of gamers like the alien ships, honestly, in my opinion. So maybe that is why it's down 10.6% year over year. But to you, how much do you feel that the opinions of the game impacts, or the status of the game impacts an event like Ship Showdown?
I think it impacts it in the way that everything basically these days is an eyeball game, right? You basically need to get the most in front of people in order to get the most engagement. Most people aren't waking up in the morning and being like, oh, today's the Ship Showdown, I should go vote. They're seeing like a video or a post or a picture or something that reminds them of it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the fact that the game is struggling means people are paying less attention, means they're not getting as many recommended videos, or they're not seeing it as much on their Twitter feed, or they're not hearing their friends talk about it as much, which means they don't vote as much. So I do think that that has some impact, but I'm not sure it's all that. I also think that the community obviously is a lot bigger than it was, and I think that a lot of people don't even notice this event in their first year of following. So like a lot of newcomers come in May and June after Invictus Week. And in those first 3 months, they might not get that tied in, but by the time CitizenCon comes around, maybe they get more interested in the game. So by that time next year, they're more into the social media, or they're seeing more of the messaging on the website. And I think CIG pushes the marketing for this more and more every year. So I do think naturally we see some growth, and I'd love to see, with your lovely numbers here, I would love to see how, like, if you could take that into account. I don't even know how, like, if you could see how much the community has grown as well, and see if that factors into like the increased engagement. But I do think that also, like Ollie said, it's not always a logical choice. It's kind of an emotional choice, and it's like
the Terrapin
this
winning.
one makes me feel good. Yeah, like the C1 is people really like it because it's like a fairly new ship. It looks really good, and it's a size that a lot of people can use. People like the Nursa because, like you said, it's got a great feature tied to it. It's new and it's got a fun name. The Nursa is a great name. It's fantastic. And so I think, it's just like a lot of factors that go into it. But I'm glad to hear that, it's got more engagement the next year. I think the way that they formatted it this year with categories does help a little bit with us not get the same freaking group of ships every single year.
Yep. Which to that exact point, we don't have a Carrack involved. So Carrack won in 2950. It won in 2952. It wasn't even a contender. So that's very interesting. Corsair wasn't a contender, and it won last year. So I agree with you. I think the selection of this year is super interesting. I will say, your point about the community growing and having more people, I want to bring your attention to 2023. So this is last year's. It was down. Like, it was down 15% year over year. Almost every single match was down. I don't remember which patch this was around. It started August 23rd. So 366 days ago. It started August 23rd. I don't remember which patch we were in, but it's just interesting. Like, I can't make sense of the numbers. I see.
Well, that makes.
Go ahead.
Based on what you said, that makes sense, because 2022 in May, huge boost to numbers. A lot of content creators got in, so that could account for that. And maybe I was wrong about the time it takes for people to get involved. And then 2023 in the summer was just coming off of the 318 disaster stuff. So
good call.
Yeah, I feel like it took people a while to come back after 318.
Wait, am I a year behind there? I don't even. Is that the wrong year?
Was 318 last year, or was it 2 years ago?
I think it was beginning of last year.
We don't even know anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
that's how bad this is.
Oh no,
guys.
What has happened? Star Citizen has corrupted time.
No,
I don't know.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right, because CitizenCon last year was 320. Remember, 320 dropped right after CitizenCon. So like that 100% was 318 was last year. Yeah. So that would
try to forget.
Yeah.
I'm doubting myself.
we've forgotten it existed. So real quick, anything surprised you here? I thought the selection, I thought the Terrapin having a chance in winning, that was a surprise.
It's not a surprise.
Whatever. I don't know. I thought this was a great selection. I wasn't truly surprised by anything. The STV stood no chance against the Nursa. To everybody's point, that was a ridiculous matchup. I guess the only surprise for me was the F8C destroying the F7C Mark II. And I just think they're two different ships. One's fast and nimble, the other one's a heavy fighter. I wouldn't think that there'd be such a blowout of the F8C versus the F7C. So that to me was my surprise. It used
to be like exclusive. So I think people have like for me personally, I remember walking in the halls and being like, oh, look, it's the F8C or F8 Lightning or whatever. That's such a cool ship.
Yeah.
So I think, that just automatically keeps it cool for longer than a ship that's been in game for a really long time, or like a version of the ship, I should say. But,
yeah.
Just
a cool ship.
Good point.
Yeah.
Like the C1.
With its tiny feet.
With last question for y'all. Who wins it all? So the remaining is C1 Nursa 600i, which I sure hope it's not the 600i. We have way too many paint jobs for that ship. But C1 Nursa 600i, Terrapin, Fury LX, Reclaimer, Sulin, and the F8C. So Space Tomato, to you, who wins it all?
It really could be whoever wins today's.
You think so?
Those are two heavy hitters. I think the Terrapin benefited from going up against the Gladiator. I don't know if that's actually going to make it all the way. I don't see anything else on that list that stands out as a favorite that much, but I'm not as into ships as I am to features. So,
yeah,
I don't actually have my finger on the pulse like that.
Yeah. Well, and that comment right there echoes what Ollie was saying. Is like people are probably more interested in the features than they are the actual ship itself. I think if the 600i got its update, it had its medical bed, it got everything that it's supposed to receive in its update, it would win hands down. I think that is a fan favorite, and I think that would go far. But Ollie, over to you. Who wins?
I think it comes down to which ship people want the paint for
I know.
the most. And I would say because of its exclusivity, it's probably the F8C.
Okay.
And I think the final will be the C1 as much as I don't want it to be, and the F8C.
Okay.
Because the Nursa is cool, and I think it should win, but it doesn't need a new paint.
Yeah.
So, and that's all it comes down to. I think for most people, it's like, which one of these ships do I want a cool paint for? 600i, or whatever it is. So, I think most people probably want a cool new paint for the F8 Lightning.
Yeah.
I would assume.
All right. C1 it is.
You heard it here, folks. Yeah, that same sentiment bothered me. Like, I want the 890 jump to win once. I want it to win once because
it's never going to win.
That bothers me. Like,
because people that don't own an 890 jump don't want to give it to you. They don't want you to have a new skin.
That's right.
For the 890 jump. That's the reality.
It's fair. Completely fair. Well, on that more uplifting note, I want to go ahead and wrap this guy up. I want to go over to Ollie first. Any sign off? How do we find more of you if we don't already know? Links will be in the bio. Links will be in all the different forms of social media. But Ollie, how can we get more of you?
I have started a bit of a streaming journey. So I actually record my videos live is how I kind of phrase it, I guess. I make videos whilst live streaming. So if you want to come hang out while I make videos, Twitch and on YouTube, as I said, links in the description. Yeah, that's kind of the wave. I've done this for a long time, and I don't want to talk to myself in a room anymore. I need people around me.
There it is. Yeah, I totally understand the sentiment and sharing that.
I feel that.
Yeah. Space Tomato, this is, again, your third time on. You're almost a regular at this point, but new listeners, how can we get more Space Tomato?
Thank you for bringing me on 3 times. I hope my ramblings don't scare people away too much. But I have been losing track of the YouTube channels. We have 4 now. So the main channel is mainly focused on basically topics like what we've been talking about today, following development and trying to give some insight into how it's worked historically and where it's headed in the future. That's just Space Tomato. Space Tomato 2, I've got a couple podcasts as well as some longer form deep dives and kind of live analysis of the news that comes out that I do. I just started a gameplay channel, Space Tomato Plays, so I'll be putting more up there in terms of like things that I'm doing, not just Star Citizen related, but really any game, whether that's feature highlights through gameplay or just like narrative gameplay or stream summaries. And then me and my wife actually just started the Tomatoes channel, which mainly we're doing more personal stuff, life here in Turkey,
Yeah.
cooking stuff,
yeah.
and the challenges of all that entails. Well, living here, not cooking.
That's cool.
But yeah, it's all,
Awesome.
you can find it all from one channel if you'd like, or you could just search Space Tomato and see what pops up. I also stream on Twitch, and
Yeah.
that's about that. Enough plugging.
Oh, I love it. Now, I have mad respect for the two of you. I don't know how you do it. Don't know how you have the bandwidth, and what y'all do is damn near professional, if not professional. So really appreciate y'all blessing us and being on this podcast. For those of first-time listeners, to be on the verse, all social media /BTV_cast. YouTube is @BTV_cast. You can join our in-game organization Sole Provision at www.robertspaceindustriescom/orgs/provision. I hope this finds everybody well. Again, we're on all these social medias. Join everybody, send some love, safe travels as you traverse beyond the verse. Take care, everybody.